All right guys, now that we've got all the hardware on, the wind braces on, all the end wall framing is done, it's time for the exciting part and the really satisfying part, and that's putting on the greenhouse film. So let's get after it on the end walls first.
To start, let's unroll our end wall film and make sure that we have the text facing out so you can read it from the outside of the greenhouse. Your first piece of wiggle wire is going to go into the top middle channel of the bow, and you're going to work from the middle out. Make sure you want to try and keep this taut as you're inserting the wiggle wire. The wiggle wire goes in with just a zigzag motion back and forth that zips the film into the channel and holds it against the base of the greenhouse. So once we have it zipped into the top bow, we're going to pull it down and go ahead and zip into the baseboard wire lock channels. And after we get all that done, as you can see here, the guys are going through and wiring around any of the add-ons like we have on this house, the roll-up door feature. Anytime you get to the end of a channel is when you're going to use a pair of wire snips to just go ahead and snip off the wire and tuck that into the base so it doesn't stick out and poke through the poly. And then we're going to repeat the same steps on the opposite end wall. We're just going to work from the middle out and the top down while keeping the film tight. Once we've got that installed, then we're going to come back through and trim the poly, leaving about 3 to 4 inches of excess. And now we're ready to get started on the main piece of poly. In order to make it easier to pull the large piece of film over the greenhouse bow, John has tied a bottle to both corners of the main piece of film and then to a piece of stick that's connected to a rope that'll give us something to pull the film over the bow from the opposite side of the greenhouse. Now this is the part of the installation where it's nice to have a group of people. It can be done with just a couple people, but the more the merrier. Now as you're pulling the main piece of poly, take time as you cross the peak not to hit any hardware like cross connectors or sharp edges. You definitely don't want to rip the main piece of poly. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. As you're pulling it, be aware to pull it evenly, both left and right and front and back. Now for this next part, we're going to start on one end wall and begin to wiggle wire the main film into the first bow. Once we get it wired into the first bow, then we're going to go to the opposite end of the greenhouse, pull taut on the film, and then wiggle wire the main film into the last bow of the greenhouse. Next, we're going to add wire lock down the length of the greenhouse into the channel that's run into the header board. We're going to continue this down the entire length of the greenhouse on both sides. Now that we have the main piece of poly attached to the greenhouse, it's time for us to trim off the excess. Now since we have roll-up sides on this particular greenhouse, we're going to leave a little extra film, more than we would otherwise. We're going to repeat this process on both sides, and then doing this you're going to have a lot of excess poly. We recommend folding that up and saving them away for future projects around the farm. Once we get that done, we're going to move on to the end walls. We're going to trim the excess off here, leaving about a 4 to 6 inch flap overhang. Be very careful during this trimming, trying not to punch holes in the end wall film. Another thing I want to note is that if we weren't on location, we would have picked a day with nice weather and really low wind. But luckily, we were able to get this greenhouse film on right before the storm rolled in.